You're listening to The Catalyst with Samantha Kris, where we explore the inner workings of embracing the unknown, from ordinary daily habits to extraordinary measures. Get ready, we're about to ignite change and inspire action. Welcome back, everyone. I am your host, Samantha Kris. With me today is Sally Rosa. Sally is an HR professional with an entrepreneurial spirit. With over 12 years of experience building and streamlining HR departments, she saw a need for strategic people management in small to medium-sized businesses. While simultaneously working as the Vice President of People at d'Absolute, a technology implementation and consulting firm, she was given the opportunity and support to build her vision from the ground up, resulting in HRYS, a customizable HRYS for small to medium businesses. Now supporting clients across the globe with their HRYS needs, she continues to look out for clients' best interests. Sally, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Samantha.
What a time to be an HR professional, am I right?
It's been busy, to say the least. So, 2020 started off with a bang. Our clients really needed to take a step away for a few months from being strategic, to be honest. They really had to fight fires for a couple of months. But when they came back, I feel like being remote really enabled them to start thinking bigger. So I would say that, it's been busy, it's been convoluted, but there's been a silver lining that came out of it. And it's really allowed the profession to kind of step up and step outside of just what it's seen as sometimes, which is administrative. So, yeah.
Organizations have really had to change the way they operate over the course of 2020, and in some cases have completely needed to pivot in order to survive. And I think preserving or establishing a strong company culture is right now of utmost importance for leaders, and diversity and inclusion are critical components. You're of the belief that diversity and inclusion are not just trending topics right now, and they're not just HR policies, but that businesses have to fundamentally change what they're doing and how they're operating so that they can really start to lead from the heart. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, I think leading from the heart, and I'm glad we started there. COVID allowed us all to start introspecting, whether it's on a personal level or with our families, but specifically for us from an organization viewpoint. We spent a lot of time this summer thinking, why did we make it through? Why did we succeed? And what made that? And how do we give back to that? And what we realize is that one thing that's really close to us is our values, and we don't speak of them loud enough. And I think that's the nature of business. We've all kind of been raised to think business is business. Business is not personal. And that's really what we're trying to shatter right now. Business is personal. We don't want to shy away from things that matter to us. We had a much bigger crisis than COVID was, Black Lives Matter, and we did not want to go mute on that topic. So that's kind of where it started. And we realized that there is something we can do beyond just talking about it. It's enabling our clients to do what they can internally. Sometimes it's through our technology. Sometimes it's just having conversations. But we do believe that playing our part is what's going to set a footprint for organizations out there to do the same. And being quiet in the process doesn't do that.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And on that topic of values and leading from the heart, how have you seen companies either bridge the gap or reassess the way that they're approaching their values? Because it's oftentimes something that was drafted years ago, you could find on a poster, it's something that's in your employee handbook, but the true value of the company and the culture that emerges is really comes from the ground up. It doesn't come from an employee handbook. It comes from how people actually feel within the organization. So how can we make sure as leaders that we are indeed leading from the heart and making that part of the culture in a way that's felt and feels genuine?
It's being genuine. You just said it. So is there a handbook and manual to train our managers to do it? No, but we can all live it. So just as, I myself am living it, and I myself am coaching and kind of leading with that view, well, I'm doing the same thing as I'm showing my leaders what I'm doing. But I think that is the only way to bring values downstream within an organization. It's to live it and to believe in it. And the other thing is that, a lot of our missions and values, like you said, for many decades, were very business oriented, very customer oriented. And I'm not saying we need to step away from that by any means, but when our vision is customer oriented, I think it's okay now to say that we choose customers, or we choose to work with customers who have similar beliefs, or we choose not to work with organizations who maybe don't have similar beliefs, because synergies exist throughout an organization, not just within the employees' teams and not just out externally, but through and through, between every single relationship between employees, customers, etc. So, it's one and the same. Whatever you're living internally, you've got to be able to live it externally, and not be afraid to speak about it either.
And I think it's so important right now, more than ever, for employees to feel like they are aligned with organizations that they feel respect their own personal values. This year has given us reason to pause and to think, am I working for a company and with people who are in fact aligned with what matters to me?
Right. So I think that alignment is super important, and internal coherence is going to make an employee perform way better than someone who's just clocking in and clocking out, and not really doing it from the heart. So you're absolutely right. I do not have the stat on hand, but I do know that the newer generations coming into the workforce are looking for way beyond compensation, way beyond the job description, but they're looking for organizations who do care about what they care about, and know how to contribute to those values.
So on that topic of caring, I mean, you went into this space, to the HR field, because you care about people. You care about creating inclusive workplaces and bringing diversity to the conversation. Have you felt any professional inequalities personally that you feel have kind of fueled this mission of yours?
I mean, to say that I haven't would be a lie for sure. Can't see me, but I am a brown, curly-haired, young female entrepreneur in the IT industry. So I think I've settled enough there. So yeah, of course, we've all felt them. Did one specific one fuel it? No, I think what fueled it was that introspection this year, to be grateful for what we've done this year, to realize that success did not come on its own. And so the introspection just led us to see that it's the diversity within our workplace that created a synergy. It's caring for one another as a team that brought us to where we are. And it's really fueled our plans moving forward.
I totally agree that introspection has been a huge part of this year for so many reasons. And when we think of change, particularly within organizations, we almost put the onus on people to do that introspection and to do something with the results. Or we pass the buck to HR and say, hey, this is your problem to solve. But in reality, waiting for that guidance really perpetuates the mentality that is keeping us stuck in the first place of, oh, this is, for someone else to deal with, or someone will give me the answers in order for me to make the changes that I ought to make. And I think we need more people to take ownership and recognize that we all have a role to play in making change happen. What are some of the things that we can do in the workplace in particular to make meaningful changes, no matter how small they might be?
Yeah, first thing, I think that you nailed it, is it's not an HR thing by any means. What HR can do, however, is trigger conversations, but just like the rest of us can do that. So if there's one walk away today, it's, if you're not doing anything else, talk about it. If you are lucky enough to be at the executive table and no one else is talking about it, talk about it. Bring up diversity. Are we diverse enough around this table? So just certainly talking about it. And that's the other thing, is that an employee can certainly come up and ask, hey, do we have a policy to ensure that there's fairness in the way people are promoted? Do we do an internal equity study? It's conversation. Conversation is what's going to fuel all of these aspects, for sure.
So I've worked with organizations and for organizations where it didn't particularly feel safe to have those conversations. And those who did come forward and say, hey, this isn't okay, or we should probably rethink the way we're doing things, walked away with like almost a target on their back. And it didn't really create an environment where having those conversations were accepted. And so it became the norm to don't bother bringing it up, don't bother asking questions, which is a really unfortunate environment to be in. And so for those who might also be in that situation where their suggestions or their questions have not been well received, like how can we keep that conversation going?
Oh, this is going to be so controversial, so forgive me. Honestly, one thing that happened earlier this year was I was having a conversation with a girlfriend of mine about how this and that person simply didn't understand when I talked about white privilege. And I gave up on the conversation. She goes, well, that's where you failed. You don't give up on a conversation because it's your opportunity to educate, as uncomfortable as it may be. So to that, I say, if you are an employee who has brought something up, and you've gotten pushback or you've been looked down on, it's okay to feel like maybe it's not the right place for you. And that's where the introspection starts. And you can try again and maybe approach someone that you think would be more open-minded, because, an organization is not one person typically. So definitely give it another shot. But if the top is really closed-minded, for your own health and well-being, probably finding an organization that is more aligned with your values will allow you to wake up a little bit lighter in the morning. And then we hope that companies like mine being vocal on social media will eventually influence those organizations that are closed-minded and bring them to a place where they realize those conversations are important to be had and changed.
Thank you. I mean, we've talked a lot about, I think, personal responsibility and going inward and seeing what we can do to enact change. But what responsibility do leaders have? I mean, the ones that are leading teams, what can they do to make sure that these conversations are being had, that they're being listened to, and that change is actually in motion?
Yeah, so we have to take bites. I mean, it depends where the organization is in their journey. But a lot of our organization or our clients right now, they're focusing on self-declaration forms that they're able to do through HRYS, and that's a start. Basically, what they're doing is they're putting a form out there that's fully anonymous to ask, like, what kind of diversity do we have within our workplace? And if you want to fill it out, great. And if you don't want to fill it out, that's okay too. But starting to ask the questions is definitely a good place to start. As a leader, it's also planting seeds and opening doors. One thing we have to do better is listen. So just plant the seed and say, hey, you know what? I want to talk about diversity, and do we have enough of it? And what can we do? And then leave it there and see the conversation that's generated from simply planting a seed and listening.
What are your thoughts on these types of conversations and initiatives starting at home, outside of the workplace, in order for them to be pulled through?
That's absolutely where it starts. And it not only just at home, but at school too, right? And that's why we kind of, at the start of this conversation, talked about how for decades we're told that business isn't personal, it's just business. That's where it starts, actually. Business is personal. We are all people behind our businesses, and it is okay that our business has feelings and cares about certain things. So that's one of the changes that has to shift. But how do those changes happen? They actually start by raising our kids to know that feelings are okay, that it's okay to cry, that it's okay to talk about how your friend is a different color and what that means, and that maybe they were treated unfairly. All those conversations, they start right, at the young age, and hopefully they carry through. And when you and I talk in 30, 40 years, this is not even a conversation to be had anymore, hopefully.
Mm. And then we'll look back on this episode and fond memories.
and wonder what the heck a podcast was.
Yeah, probably. That's so funny. Is there an example that you can share of a company that you're working with through HRYS that's really doing it well?
Yes, you caught me by surprise, but I am prepared because I do have a client that's really making an effort right now, and that's Two Cows. They're a tech firm based out of Toronto, just about 800 employees these days, verging on 1,000. So they're really experiencing a lot of growth, and their leader of people, I think Chief People Officer, is Jess Johansson. And it is so top of mind. Her openness and understanding that diversity in the workplace creates synergy is inspiring. We're working together to make sure that genders within the system are well respected, that people can go by their preferred names and not necessarily by their legal first names. It's an effort that we're working on together right now. So just the fact that she highlights these things and how much those things matter, it shows me that she's leading an organization that's really on the right path to building diversity in her industry as a whole, to be honest.
And do you think that there's kind of a trend or common thread with some of the other organizations that might be resisting such innovation and such openness? I mean, I don't know if I'm asking the question well, but I'm just wondering, for the organizations that are pushing back, is it usually because of a few things?
Honestly, I really don't think so. I don't think what we are promoting right now is something that is risky by any means. Although, women at the leadership table does seem risky still. But I don't think that there is a specific trend. I think that it's simply prioritization that doesn't highlight this need. And if we realize that diversity is a priority because diversity can benefit your organization and the synergy within and the innovation that can come from it and the conversations and the new products and just everything that can come from having different people working within your organization, when we realize the benefits of that and make that a priority, then I think most organizations will align. But it's an exercise that some organizations haven't taken the time to do because there is a math calculation behind it. And I think the math calculation would show that financially, it's a smart decision to make. It's just not flashy enough. And I think that's where we wanted to make it flashy. We want to step up and say, yeah, we're going to talk about this topic. It might be controversial. It may have nothing to do with an HR technology tool, but we're going to talk about it because we think that talking about it's going to open some eyes out there.
That's great insight. I have worked with organizations that their approach to diversity and inclusion is admirable, but yet they don't have diversity policies. There's no structure in place to enforce it and to support it because it is felt that it's not something we don't want to hire for numbers. We don't want to hire for the sake of saying that we hired X amount of women, we hired X amount of people of color. And because I guess the best way I could describe it is kind of like fundamentally about doing it just for the sake of doing it. They're doing it because they wholeheartedly believe that this is how it should be done. But as a result, or in absence of such a structure, the scale is not always balanced. And so how do we approach something like that where we genuinely believe it, as leaders of organizations and of projects, but it's not necessarily reflected in a structure that would help enforce it?
Yeah, and I think that's education, because I have to be honest and say, I think I was sitting in that same chair a few years ago where I'm like, you know what, we are pretty diverse ourselves, and do we really need a policy? And after a bit of education, I think it is important to build a structure. Why? Because when we don't build a structure, we don't give certain opportunities. So we're not saying hire a less qualified female over a more qualified male. We're not saying that. We're just saying that if you have 8 males at the table and you are currently recruiting for a ninth position, where you have a female and a male who are both qualified for the role, hire the female. And why? Purely because she's a female, but they're both qualified and you don't have the numbers at the table right now to build that diversity. Same goes for other things, right? So whether it's age, if you check your age groups within your organization, that goes beyond diversity, right? You can't have everybody retiring or quitting at the same time. So that's just for the sake of business, but you should certainly have a structure there. And as well for different groups, groups of Black people or groups of Aboriginals. When we don't go out in those specific communities to give the opportunities, then we're never going to get certain communities out of where they are. So I think that's why structure really matters, and getting educated on how to do it in a way that's still fair benefits everybody.
Thank you. What is one thing organizations, HR or not, but what is one thing that leaders, let's say, can do today after listening to this to spark the conversation of diversity and inclusion in their workplace?
That's a good question. I think I'm going to go back to the same place we were, which is converse. And what we said was lead from the heart. So do it from from the top of the hierarchy. If you are a leader and you have a senior executive team, talk about it there, and normalize it there so that we as leaders can normalize it to our next level managers, and our next level managers can normalize it to employees below. And if you have a leader who wholeheartedly believes in it, don't wait for the hierarchy, don't wait for the ladder. Simply talk about it on your next town hall and say that I don't have a structure yet, but I know that for 2021, I want to make sure that we talk about diversity and that we start building a structure to make sure that we're diverse. So the conversation it has to happen somewhere. And if you're not in a position to talk about it, because maybe you're an independent contractor or whatever it may be, continue to talk about it with your clients, with your family, because that's how we spread inspiration to work on it within our networks.
One of the things you just mentioned kind of brings me back to somewhat of a triggering event. There was an organization I was working with, and the topic of diversity and inclusion was indeed brought up at the town hall and was so poorly managed by the CEO, who got so defensive that the employees would even think this was an issue. And it was, but dealt with it in such a way that, like I said, just kind of immediately went on the defense of how could this be? And don't you see what we're doing and what we're building? And everyone is involved and everyone is included and the doors are open to anyone. But it really shut down, the desire to bring such ideas forward. How can we, or those who are leading organizations, if a topic such as diversity and inclusion is brought to the forefront and we do feel defensive, how can we handle it in a way that we can put our ego or whatever it is aside and make space for a worthwhile conversation?
And I understand the defensiveness, because if you are a leader of an organization, you want to feel like you've been inclusive. Most of the time you've been inclusive, but you've not taken an extra step to break some barriers. And that's all it is. So, for that leader who wholeheartedly believes that their organization is diverse as it is, congratulations, that's amazing. However, challenge yourself and take it a step further and do one of two things. Either work with the rest of your executive team to pull out a structure that will then confirm that you're diverse, or confirm that you could do a little bit more work and, go into universities or go into certain communities to do your recruitment, or get an applicant tracking system that removes names so you're not hiring in a biased way, but talk about it. And if you're not there yet, I really, really recommend getting a coach. And there is no leader that is too high or too senior for a coach. I think coaches these days work wonders because they ask questions until you get to a place where you understand why you're feeling defensive about diversity and inclusion in your workplace, and where you break down the defensiveness until you organically become okay with it and talking about it.
Awesome. Thank you. So what's next for you and for HRYS?
This summer we talked about our values. We lined them up, and we're going to make sure that our values are publicized, so that our clients and our networks know what we're all about, and we're not going to shy away from them. So they are personal, our values, and that's okay. We've also just launched a campaign, 2 campaigns. One of them is the Get to Know Us campaign. And we just launched it a couple of weeks ago. It's for our clients and our networks to get to know us as people. So beyond purchasing our HRYS tool and getting us to implementing for you, who are we, and do you think that you'd like to collaborate with us? So, it's what we like, what we do, but also what causes matter a lot to us. And for each time that we introduce one of our employees, we donate on behalf of a cause that matters a lot to that person. And we're going to be doing the same with our clients. So that's really exciting. We're also going to do a get to know our clients. So we can do kind of a little highlight on people who are companies that we're working with, why they're working with us, and what causes they care about, and how we can contribute to those. So that's kind of giving back. I think this year, 2021, is a thank you for the universe and letting us survive 2020. And kind of going and seeing where we go from there. Yeah.
Wonderful. And where can people follow to learn more about you and these awesome initiatives that you've got lined up?
Sure. I mean, they can definitely follow us on LinkedIn, where they can see these social posts. And we're on HRYS.com. We're on all social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and like I said, LinkedIn. And yeah, that's basically it.
Sally, thank you so much for taking time to be on the show with me today. It's been really great chatting with you.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, Samantha.
Friends, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of The Catalyst with Samantha Kris. If you like what you heard, be sure to leave us a review and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, I hope you're feeling a little more equipped to lean into the unknown and take inspired action.